Yeah, it needed more ponies. Written by Shadowflame. Read by no one, nobody, and others.
I need more ponies.
We get chased by Wiener dogs. I breathed in ragged gasps as I tried to catch my breath. Honestly, right now, my heart was beating faster than it ever had in my life before, most likely from adrenaline rushing through it. I slumped back on the futon in Emily's den, feeling more than worn out, but feeling so good at the same time. I must have really exerted myself if I was this tired now, but heck, it was a blast. Beside me, Emily took the same position of me, breathing hard as well. She glanced towards me with those big almond eyes, blinking as she recalled everything that had happened in the past few minutes.
Whoa, that was...
Fun? I ventured. She giggled, stretching her cyan wings, which she had sat back on more than once.
Definitely.
I chuckled as I massaged my mildly aching hooves. Man, I've never had to use a controller that hard before. You weren't kidding when you said you were good at this game. Emily smiled back, reaching for her own controller.
Well, I do play with my sister on it quite a bit. She's part of the Smash Bros. Club at her school, so I have to help her practice when she wants.
She blushed a tiny bit, which was so adorable with her Pegasus face.
Even still, she's only beaten me a few times out of 100 other matches.
I blinked at her in surprise. Wow, she's not only adorable, but she's a pro at Smash Brothers too? I think I'm in love. I looked back towards the title screen of the game again, sighing a bit. When we had first started doing stock elimination rounds, Emily had needed a few practice rounds to get used to using her hooves on the controller. During that time, I'd been going easy on her, but as we progressed in rounds, she turned more and more into a challenging opponent, up to the point where I had to go all out to keep from losing. Sometimes she beat me, though. The end result of wins came out to being 10-10. We had been perfectly matched. I glanced towards Emily. Hey, I think we need a break. She nodded.
Yeah, you can only smash for so long before you get bored.
What time is it? I asked, looking around the room for a clock. Emily knew where it was and answered.
About 1. But both my little sister and dad won't be home for another few hours or so.
I nodded as Emily turned the GameCube and TV off. Right. So what should we do till then? Emily scratched a hoof to her head and thought.
Well, I don't know.
Momentarily bored, I glanced out a nearby window in the room. Emily's den was on the second floor of her house, which meant when I looked out, I got a pretty good view of the neighborhood, although there was practically nobody out on the road since it was the middle of school and work hours. But then, something caught my eye. It was a black Honda, coming down the street. I would have just thought nothing of it had it not suddenly pulled into Emily's driveway. Emily? Who's that? She joined me by the window as I pointed a hoof at the car that just pulled up. Upon seeing the car, her eyes instantly widened and her wings flared in astonishment.
Oh no, that's my dad. He's not supposed to get home till 5. What's he doing here?
She quickly bolted away from the window and out the door of the den.
I can't let him see me like this.
I chased after her as she ran through the house panicking. Wait, what? She quickly led us to another room, which Emily flung open, ushering me inside.
Quick, inside my room.
I quickly complied, and she slammed the door shut behind us. Her bedroom wasn't too fancy, just like any bedroom, but that wasn't really important right now. On the edge of hysteria, Emily explained.
This morning, after my first transformation happened, I told my parents that I was sick and I should stay home from school. They never saw the parts of me that had changed, and I don't think my dad's going to be happy to find out I've turned into a small talking horse.
My ears, as did Emily's, swiveled towards the door of the room, where behind it we could hear the front door downstairs slam shut, and footsteps echoed through the house.
No, what do we do?
Emily whispered. Shh, calm down, I reassured her. So long as he doesn't look in here, we'll be fine. We just need to keep quiet and...
Emily, are you there?
A distant voice called, whose I guessed was Emily's dad. Emily's hooves flew up over her muzzle as she squealed in fright.
Oh no!
Her dad's voice called again, closer this time, as his footsteps could be heard traveling up the stairs outside the room.
Emily?
Emily's legs were frantically pacing in place, no doubt looking for a place to hide.
Oh no, what do we do now?
I glanced around the room, searching for somewhere to hide, but then my eye caught sight of Emily's bedroom window. It was wide open. Outside, I could see a similar sight of the outdoors, much like the view from the den window. Both rooms were on the same floor, after all. An idea suddenly came to mind. I quickly grabbed Emily's hoof. "Come here, I've got an idea. Let's hope those wings of yours work." I pulled her over to the window, which would serve as the means of our escape. Most likely. Meanwhile, Emily's father, Roger Clearwater, ascended the staircase up to his daughter's room. He had returned home to retrieve something he had forgotten for work, but he thought he'd check on Emily before he headed out again. After all, the poor girl had wound up sick just that morning. Even worse, she said she had plans for a date that afternoon, which she would have to miss so that she could recover. Upon reaching Emily's door, Roger knocked on it gingerly.
Emily, are you awake?
Receiving nothing but silence, the father opened up the door, only to find a completely empty room. No sign of Emily anywhere in there.
I guess she's not here.
Roger muttered to himself as he closed the door.
She must be somewhere else in the house.
So he began searching through the rest of his house for Emily.
Did he see us?
Emily shouted worriedly. I just clung onto her, arms around her neck as I held on for dear life. What was I thinking? Don't worry about it. Just watch where you're going.
Easy for you to say.
She replied, equally as worried for her life as I was.
I've never flown before.
Her wings were extended out from her sides, the only things keeping us airborne. But her worried outbursts made her wings twitch, causing our glide from her bedroom window to wobble. I clung onto her even harder than before, but I was careful not to hurt her, lest we drop out of the air and onto a painful landing. Neither have I.
Then why did you even suggest?
Watch out for that! Bush. Bush. We both groaned as our descent abruptly ended on top of some decently soft vegetation, a couple of bushes in a flower bed. I rolled myself off of Emily, groaning as a few loose twigs scratched my fur. No offense, Emily, but I don't think I'm ever trying that again. At least not until you've learned how to fly. Emily moaned as she ran a hoof through her mane to get all the leaves and twigs out of it.
Ditto. I'm just glad we landed in the shrubs and not the rose bushes.
I winced at the thought of it. Yeah, me too. I stood up to get a better look at where we landed. From what I could tell, Emily's house was now on the other side of a giant white fence. Well, giant from my perspective, having shrunk quite a bit from the pony transformation. We now stood in the backyard of what seemed to be her neighbor's house, which meant we were basically home free. Well, the good thing is we don't have to worry about your dad seeing us now, I mused. Emily blinked as she looked around, her eyes growing wide again.
Bad news. Now we're in Old Lady Wilkins' yard.
How is that bad? Is she some kind of crotchety old lady? I asked. Emily bit her lip, glancing around the yard warily.
Well, yes, she is a bit cranky, but she loves dogs. And when I say that, I mean she really loves dogs.
Suddenly, dozens of barking noises emanated from the other side of the yard, and I suddenly wondered if I wanted to look at whatever was making the noise, or start running for the hills. Peering over the bushes that hadn't been crushed, I saw what seemed to be a legion of short, long, steady-legged dachshunds, all running towards us at breakneck speed. By the look of their bared teeth, I could only imagine that they'd never seen multicolored ponies before, and therefore wanted to find out just how chewy we were. In other words, it seemed like we were going to be mauled by a horde of wiener dogs. Man, I've heard of crazy cat ladies before, but a crazy dog lady really took the cake. Emily wasn't kidding when she said this old lady Wilkins loved dogs. Emily grabbed my arm with her hoof in a hard tug.
Run!
On it! I galloped as fast as I could, with Pegasus Emily right beside me, as we ran for our lives from a vicious mosh pit of wiener dogs. Could my life get any weirder and not include imminent doom? Emily and I ran for what seemed like an hour, though it probably hadn't been exactly that long, from the legion of Wiener dogs. Thankfully, it was still early in the afternoon, so I don't think anybody witnessed a dozen dachshunds chasing 2 colorful ponies through the neighborhood. Well, anybody who wouldn't pass it off as them going crazy. Even thinking about it, the sight sure seemed bizarre. Soon, I spotted a very large bush, and leading Emily to it, we took cover underneath its leaves. Sitting my thankful rump on the dirt beneath the bush, I gasped as I tried to catch my breath.
Do you, think we lost them?
Emily took a glance through the bush leaves, her own breathing returning to normal.
Looks like it.
I groaned as my legs whined a bit from using them so hard.
Man, I could have sworn those dogs were wearing shock collars.
Emily rolled her eyes.
Well, you should have told them that. Those dumb dogs probably would have remembered if they had a few volts running through their body ever since they left the Wilkins property.
I let out a light chuckle.
You know I'm joking, right?
I wasn't.
Emily laughed back.
Those dogs wouldn't know if they were hit by a car unless you showed them a slow-motion action replay of it.
Not sure how to respond to that, I nodded slowly.
Right.
To distract myself from an incoming awkward moment, I looked around at our surroundings through the bush leaves.
Where are we anyways?
Emily took a look, perking up slightly when she did.
Oh, it looks like we ran all the way to the park.
The park?
I frowned.
Is there anyone around?
She shook her head.
Not that I can see.
I sighed in relief.
Phew, that's good. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of dead right now. I really need a break.
Emily nodded as she fell flat on her back onto the soft dirt, her wings unfurling out in a lazy manner.
Yeah, me too.
So, there we sat, not even talking to each other for a while. Needless to say, it got kind of awkward. But even if I thought it, Emily didn't seem to care. She just seemed to be lost in her own thoughts. I made an effort to break the silence.
So what do you think of being a pony?
Albeit it wasn't the best question, it at least got her to respond. Emily sighed.
Along with all the craziness that comes with it. Let's see here. I woke up terrified out of my mind, and then you came along and explained what was happening. I grew wings, we played video games, ran from my dad by jumping out a window, crushed my neighbor's bushes, and ran from our dogs for who knows how long. And now we're hiding from about a dozen wiener dogs by taking cover under a bush.
I kind of winced as she spoke that. I had to admit it wasn't the best of days, and most certainly not the most normal. But to my surprise, she started laughing.
I've got to say, this has been really fun.
I blinked in surprise.
Really?
She nodded with the brightest of smiles.
Yeah, I have never had a day as adventurous as this, and truth be told, I can't wait to see what comes up next.
A nervous chuckle escaped me.
Right. Don't jinx it.
She only rolled her eyes.
Whatever, the laws of karma don't apply to me.
Giggling slightly, she asked,
Well, now that we don't have an absurd amount of dogs on our tail, what should we do now? Head over to Angela's house and hide out there?
I shook my head.
No, if I'm guessing right, it's not even 2 o'clock yet. School doesn't get out for a little while, and even then Angela doesn't get home until about 3 o'clock. We'll need to stay hidden until she gets there before we can hunker down at her place.
Then what should we do till then?
Emily asked. I paused. Really, what could we do to kill time? Here we were, 2 ponies, hiding beneath a bush at a park, with nowhere to go without a risk of someone seeing us. The result of which would most likely wind up with them either calling animal control or the FBI. If the transformation didn't wear off by then, I'd guess they'd deport both of us off to Area 51 and put us in a deep storage unit right next to the Green Man from Mars.
Wow, I really need to lay off the comic books. Well, either that or cut down on the alien-themed video games.
I sighed.
I have no idea what to do for now. Any ideas?
Emily paused, biting her lip for a moment. Her eyes wandered around outside the bush, until they came back and rested on her own wings. She turned to me with a nonchalant grin.
I'm gonna go learn how to fly. You can come watch if you want.
Yelping a bit, I tried shouting against it, but Emily had already galloped out of her cover, giggling. I quickly followed after her as she led me further into the park.
Wait, we shouldn't do anything out in the open like this. What if someone sees us? Or even worse, you fly in the air?
Emily just laughed, shouting back over her shoulder as her wings stretched from her sides.
Don't worry, the park is bigger than you think. I know a great place with plenty of trees to hide us.
I had to admit, the place where Emily led us was extremely convenient. It was a fairly large area, with nothing but soft grass on the ground. The entire place was circled about by giant trees, which must have stood at 30 feet tall at least, giving the small grove a perfect cover for Emily when she was flying, and a decent cover on the ground for me. There was a path of the park nearby, but not close enough to make me wary. It was the perfect place for Emily to learn how to fly. Emily stood on all four hooves, her legs bent and wings flared in anticipation to lift off. Meanwhile, I sat at the base of one of the trees, an unsure look plastered to my face.
Are you sure you want to learn like this? By just trying?
Emily paused, cringing slightly.
Well, I know it's not ideal, but unless you suddenly learn how to fly with wings, I think this is the only way I'll be able to learn how to do this.
She did have a point, so I couldn't really argue anything else. I mean, we were in a concealed area, which meant there was very little chance that anyone could see us, and we had nothing better to do. I sighed.
All right, just try not to crash.
Right.
Emily gulped down her worries, mustering up a bit of fading courage.
Here we go.
Her wings thrust down in a powerful flap, which instantly shot her up into the air. Emily yelped in surprise as she suddenly found herself 10 feet in the air. Her wings wobbled as she tried to right herself in the air, only for her body to tilt sideways and drop back down to solid ground with a thump.
Ow.
Emily groaned a bit before standing back on her hooves again, massaging her side she had landed on. I winced as I watched.
You okay?
After a moment, she nodded.
Yeah, I'm fine.
She spread her wings again.
I didn't think I'd get it on the first try anyway.
And so she tried again. And again. And again. To say the least, watching her try and try again, only to crash on the ground, was both kind of comical, but a bit worrying as well. I admit it was funny to see her crash spectacularly, but I did worry if she was hurting herself. Even if she wasn't letting me on about it. Every time I asked, she would only say she was fine, and right away try again. But with more and more tries, Emily managed to get more comfortable with flying, to say the least. Her wings were finally starting to flap in sync with each other. Pretty soon, she was progressing from crashing into the ground, or tree, after every attempt, to hovering wobbly 10 feet in the air. After that, she was gliding around in the grove, and even landing up on the top of the tree branches. After Celestia knows how long, she was flying around in circles with a giant grin plastered to her face.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing!
Really, all I could do was smile, as she swooped here and there inside the small area we were confined to. She was content to fly in the small airspace, and she looked like she was having the time of her life, after all that trial and error work. I knew I would be too, if I had wings too. Emily giggled as she lighted down onto a low-hanging branch of one of the trees.
Wow, I can see why Rainbow Dash is a huge fan of flying. It's awesome.
She laughed even more.
Hey, look at me! A horse in a tree!
We both had a good laugh here and there, despite the constant need to look out for anyone who happened to be passing by. Emily kept flying like before, while I watched from the ground. Truth be told, I was kind of envious, but I didn't let it bother me too much. Emily was having the time of her life, and it was fun to watch her glide like a giddy filly. But after quite some time, I spotted a few kids wearing backpacks, walking by through the trees of the park on their way home, signaling that school was over for the day. In order to stay out of sight, Emily and I retreated to another hiding place. You could probably guess where that was.
have I ever mentioned how convenient these bushes are?
I asked, slumping down onto the dirt hidden by the cover of the leaves above us. Emily, though disappointed that she had to come back down to the ground for a while, gave me a smirk.
No, but you're right. They are convenient.
Yep, it was official. Considering they were able to cushion a crash landing from a second-story window and hide the two of us from sight, bushes were the best plant in existence. There we sat beneath the bush again, keeping watch for any school kids who happened to walk by, just in case we needed to make a speedy getaway. Next to me, Emily was absent-mindedly flapping her wings slowly, as if she longed to flap them more, out in the open air again.
Anxious to fly again?
I asked. She looked towards me, nodding.
Yeah, but my wings were getting tired anyways.
I shrugged.
Well, if it means anything, you looked great up there.
She raised an eyebrow, amused.
Really?
I nodded.
Yeah, you can definitely fly now, that's for sure.
Emily blushed a bit, smiling cutely.
Thanks.
Her gaze drifted down to the ground, staying silent for a while. I wasn't sure if she was just avoiding eye contact with me, or if she was just lost in her thoughts. But, after a few moments, it turned out to be the latter. Emily glanced towards me, still smiling.
You know, you're not as bad with girls as you think you are.
Oh? Okay, I wasn't expecting that. I rubbed the back of my neck nervously.
No, not really.
And what makes you say that?
Emily persisted. I sighed.
Well, if I was good with girls, then I would have already tried asking you out on a date the normal way. Heck, if I did that, we wouldn't even be in this mess.
Emily raised an eyebrow at me, shifting her sitting position so she was facing me.
Can I ask why you didn't?
I paused for a moment, looking at Emily. She didn't look like she was demanding an answer. Her features made her look more sincere and curious, which was enough to slightly calm me down. Of course, the truth was I hadn't really thought about it. All I knew was I never asked her out because,
well, I was scared.
Scared of what?
Emily asked, a smile appearing on her face, probably trying to reassure me it was fine to tell her anything.
I was afraid of what you'd think of me. I thought I'd mess up somewhere, and I'd come across wrong to you. It happens to me all the time when I get nervous.
For a second, I swear I saw a certain gleam in Emily's eye, as she asked,
And what made you nervous?
I frowned as I looked away from her gaze.
Heck, I thought I got all the embarrassing parts off my chest back at the house. I didn't realize there was more. I don't know. You know that still have a crush on you, and I was nervous. I wasn't sure if you'd like me or if you'd just blow me off because of something else. I was scared that I wasn't good enough to even ask you out. What if you had someone else you liked instead of me? What if I wasn't good looking enough to you? What if you didn't like guys? What if you just shot me down and wouldn't let me speak to you again because...
I was stopped short as Emily gently placed a hoof over my mouth to shut me up. She had a warm look on her face, both radiating comfort and a hint of satisfaction.
Lyle, I think I know why you say you're bad with girls.
I blinked in surprise as Emily lowered her hoof from my mouth.
You do?
Emily nodded.
Yes, you see, your problem isn't that you're not good with girls. Your real problem is how you overthink things.
I frowned.
Overthink things?
She nodded.
Yeah, you see, I tend to talk with my friends about love lives quite a bit. I'm pretty much a teenage Dr. Phil for them, and I help them when they run into problems in a relationship. But whenever I asked them why they were nervous around their crush, they only said things like, he's really handsome, or she wouldn't be into me. But when I asked you that same question, you had a lot of answers, a few of which were a bit irrational, I might add.
I stared blankly at her, to which she expounded on her reply.
In simpler terms, when you overthink things, you get nervous, and that's what makes you think you're bad with girls. But I know that you are good with girls, at least when you're not overthinking things. Just look back on today.
She grinned.
It's been really fun, and you never tripped over yourself or messed up in any way, and you even complimented me on my flying without a single stutter. What were you thinking before you gave me that compliment?
I paused in thought.
I
blushed a bit.
just thought you were pretty amazing to get flying down that fast.
Emily covered her mouth with a hoof as she giggled.
Oh, thank you for that.
She smiled at me.
But you weren't overthinking that. You just went ahead and gave a compliment. If that doesn't prove my theory, I don't know what will. Besides, you're great friends with Angela, and she's a girl.
I mean, I'm not good with girls romantically.
I deadpanned.
I definitely don't have any romantic feelings for her.
Emily giggled a bit.
I could guess that. But I will say you two would make an interesting couple.
Rolling my eyes, I brought us back to the original topic.
So, you're saying I only trip over myself when I overthink things?
Emily nodded.
Most likely, going by what you've told me so far.
I scratched my chin with a hoof.
Do I really overthink things? I mean, I know I do when it comes to school. Heck, I probably wouldn't love history the way I do if I didn't overthink it. I still wonder what Emperor Nero was seeing while Rome burned to the ground.
I shook my head.
Whoa, focus, Lyle. Okay, I can definitely say I overthink things, and that carries over into my, somewhat non-existent love life? I'm not sure if it's non-existent anymore, but focus, right.
I sighed as I mentally face-hoofed myself. I glanced over at Emily, who was idly peering out of the bush leaves for anyone. But, even as she did, she looked so relaxed. I sighed to myself as I looked at her. She still looked as beautiful as any other time, even if bits of her hair had a few stray leaves in it from crashing during her pursuit of flight. 10 out of 10. I definitely want to go steady with her.
Well, if I want to be anything more than friends with her, then I need to stop overthinking things. I might as well start now.
I frowned.
But what should I do? I should at least thank her for helping me figure out my problem. But how should I do it? Should I just say thank you and leave it at that?
I frowned as I made a mental struggle not to think any more than that. But then something caught my eye. Just outside of the bush was a flower bed, which had several different flowers dotting out of the soil. A smile came to my mouth as an idea came to my mind.
Oh, I know!
Reaching a hoof out of the bush, I wrapped it around the stem of a nice orange tulip and plucked it from the ground. I turned towards Emily with the flower in my hoof, but once I saw her, I froze.
I'm giving Emily a flower? Just to thank her? What if she doesn't like it? What if...
One mental slap to the face later, I took a deep breath to calm myself down.
Don't overthink this. Just give her the flower, say thanks, and if she doesn't like it, tough luck.
Gulping a bit of nervousness down, I held out the flower in front of Emily, who blinked in surprise as she took notice of its sudden appearance. I felt myself tense up when she looked at me curiously, but I managed not to freeze up.
It's fine.
I smiled, which came surprisingly naturally.
Here, I wanted to say thank you for helping me figure out my, overthinking problem. I'm glad I know what's wrong with me when it comes to these situations.
I chuckled nervously, to which Emily innocently smiled, a bit of blush coming through her cheeks.
You're welcome, Lyle.
She gingerly took the tulip from my hoof with her own. She smiled warmly as she looked down at it, admiring the tiny plant.
I love these flowers. They look so pretty.
You think so?
Emily nodded, before bringing the flower up to her nose.
They smell nice, too.
If there was even a moment of any romanticism there, it was abruptly killed as Emily's stomach suddenly growled. I stared at Emily in surprise as she smiled sheepishly.
Oops, sorry. I didn't really get to eat a full breakfast today.
She looked back at the flower in her hooves.
Actually, this flower seems more delicious than it looks pretty. I wonder.
That's when Emily ate the flower, the token of appreciation that I had mustered up the courage to give her, only for her to gobble it down. But hey, even then it made her smile. Emily laughed as she chewed on the tulip leaves in her mouth.
Oh, wow. This actually tastes really good.
Really? I wondered. She nodded.
Yeah. Didn't you ever try eating flowers all those times you were transformed before? Go ahead, try some.
A bit unsure, I grabbed another tulip within reach of the bush and plucked it for myself. I had never tried eating a flower before, but I guess there's a first time for everything. Once my arm withdrew back into the bush with a tulipin hoof, I took a large bite out of it. The taste was amazing, surprisingly enough. I had always known that the transformation into a pony changed your taste buds as well, meaning you couldn't eat meat, but I never really stopped to realize that a new world of tastes opened up as well. As a pony, you lose meat, but you gain just about every kind of vegetation that isn't toxic to a pony. Well, a cartoon pony. But hey, who wants to argue with nature when you have the advantage of ignoring it?
These taste great.
I chuckled a bit.
Forget the salad at home. Next time I become a pony, I'm feasting on my mom's flower patch.
Emily giggled as she finished munching on her flower.
Yeah, totally.
She glanced out of the bush to where some other flowers were waiting to be plucked.
Although, those aren't that filling alone. I'm gonna get some more.
She gingerly trotted out of our cover. I quickly got up and followed after the cyan mare.
Hey, save some tulips for me. You may have missed breakfast, but both of us need some lunch.
Emily laughed back.
First come, first serve, pony boy.
Roger Clearwater was not happy. No, in fact he was quite worried. Hysterical even. His eldest daughter was supposed to be at home, sick from school, yet she was nowhere to be found. Roger slumped down on the sofa in the living room, fervently rubbing his hands together to calm his nerves. Where could Emily have gone? He had tried calling the school, in case Emily had decided she was feeling better and gone there in the middle of the day, but they said she never checked into any of her classes. She wasn't at home, and she wasn't at school. Roger had tried reaching out to any of her friends, but none of them who had picked up their phones knew where she was. Dozens of possibilities raced through his head. Had Emily lied about being sick, just so she could run off when no one was home? No, that didn't sit right with him. Emily was a terrible liar, so she would have been caught trying to play sick. Maybe someone broke in and abducted her? But there weren't any signs of a break-in either. Roger sighed as he placed his face in his hands. It was bad enough that he had to call his work, to say he probably wasn't going back for the day. But not knowing his daughter's whereabouts was racking his head with fear and worry. Fear that she might be in danger, and worry that she might not come home again. Roger bit the inside of his cheek in frustration. He knew he should call the cops and report that Emily was missing, but what if he was just taking this all wrong? What if Emily had just stepped outside for a moment, met some friends, and had full intention on coming back? He didn't want to call the police if that was the case, but... Roger looked towards the front door of the house, as if he were expecting Emily to suddenly walk through with a bright, happy smile, just like she always did when he came home from a long day at work. But that wasn't the case now. The worried father sighed to himself.
I'll wait a few more hours until it gets dark, and then I'll call the police.
Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Roger turned to see who came in, clear hope that it was Emily. But his expectant smile drooped when he saw there was only Liz, his youngest daughter. She was a bright, smiling 14-year-old who looked like a miniature version of Emily than anything. Liz walked into the house, carrying her backpack from school. Upon seeing her dad home early, Liz beamed at him.
Hey, Dad, I'm back from piano lessons.
Roger blinked in surprise.
Piano lessons?
He glanced down at his watch, which read 4:30. Had he really been home that long? But then again, he had lost track of time while searching for Emily. Trying to hide the worry in his voice, Roger smiled at Liz.
Hey, Lizzie, how was piano?
It was good.
She gave her dad a curious look.
Did you have a day off from work today?
He hesitantly nodded.
Yes, I thought I could use a day off, so I just took a small vacation day.
He paused.
Hey, Liz?
Again, Roger hesitated. He didn't want Liz to have to worry about her sister too, but she could know where she went.
Have you seen Emily anywhere?
Liz frowned.
No, I thought she stayed home sick today.
Roger sighed, shaking his head.
Oh, that's right.
It wasn't a lie, but he just didn't want her to worry.
Glad to see you're home, Lizzie.
Without another word, Roger retreated to his study to try some more phone calls and find where Emily was. Meanwhile, Liz frowned at her dad's actions. He seemed off, like there was something bothering him. But the girl shrugged it off as she towed her backpack into the kitchen. She had homework to do, and she knew she couldn't be much help with any of Dad's problems. She made her way into the kitchen, setting her backpack on the kitchen counter. But as she did, something caught her eye down on the tile floor. Something blue. Liz paused before bending down to grab the small object. When she picked it up, she found that she was holding a bright cyan feather.